play and call it work.
Hey folks, Janene from MiniWarGaming here with another how-to video for you. In today's video, I'm going to start painting this Khorne Bloodletter. It's part of a Khorne Demonkin army that I'm starting to paint, and we are definitely going non-traditional. So, instead of having the traditional iconic bright red skin tone, we're actually going to do a ghostly flesh tone. It's going to be very light and very kind of ethereal, almost like dead skin. And then we're going to bring the Khorne red into some other aspects of the model. So for this first video, I'm going to show you how to get the ghostly skin tone. And as always, if you have suggestions for what you'd like to see in future how-to videos, go ahead and leave them down below in the comments. Now this model was primed black and then sprayed with a flat black paint, in this case Abaddon black. And we are going to start by airbrushing a few colors onto the model. The first color we're going to airbrush is going to be Mechanicus Standard Gray. Now none of the colors I wanted to use for this process had a Citadel Air equivalent, so I'm going to be mixing my own paints using a clean pot and a little bit of water. I'm going to be mixing this at a ratio of about 3 to 2, 3 parts paint, 2 part water, so it's going to be about 60% paint, 40% water. Now I've said in previous videos, water isn't always necessarily the best medium to use for airbrushing, but it's cheap and non-toxic and I've gotten really comfortable with it. There's a dozen of different airbrushing mediums out there. I recommend you try them all out and find out what you like best. If you do happen to stick with water, just be careful that you don't add too much water to your mixture because you don't want to deal with pigment separation. Once I have the paint mixed, I'm going to pour it into my airbrush and I'm going to spray the model. Now I'm using a Iwata HPCS Eclipse with a 0.3 needle. I'm using a Badger air compressor set to about 25 psi, and I'm going to cover just about the entire model with this Mechanicus Battle Gray color. It goes on very light, but when it dries you can see that it's a very dark gray. Here's the model after the Mechanicus Standard Gray has had a chance to dry. Our next layer is going to be Warp Fiend Gray. I'm mixing this color in the exact same way I did with the Mechanicus Gray, and as I spray it, I'm really just concerned with getting the areas that are easily accessible. I want to leave the underside of the belly, the underside of the legs, and all the areas that are shadowed and hard to get to, that darker gray. Everything else is going to get a pretty solid coat of this color. I like this Warp Fiend color because it's got some purple tones to it, which I think really accent the kind of ghostly dead flesh look I'm going for. Here's the mini after the Warp Fiend Gray. Our next coat and our last airbrushing coat is going to be Pallid Witch Flesh. This is a very bright color and it's going to look almost white on the model, so it's going to take me a couple layers to build up a nice coat on top of the Warp Fiend Gray. I really want to make sure that I get a nice coat on the tops of the shoulders, the front of the legs, and the front of the face. And I really just want to build this up in a slow, controlled manner, doing small bursts of paint repeatedly, instead of trying to cover the whole model in one coat. Alright, here you can see the mini after the Pallid Witch Flesh has been applied. It's really starting to look ghostly and ethereal. And the next thing that we need to do is add a little bit of definition back into the mini. So we're going to take a little bit of Knoll Oil shade and we're going to apply it in the sculpted recesses of all of these muscles. I'm applying this at the strength it is out of the bottle. However, I don't want it to go on too thickly, so I'm putting some on there and then making sure that I smooth it out so it doesn't glop anywhere. And I'm really just catching the underside of all of these sculpted crevices. There's a big definition in the shoulder muscle. There's also several muscles that are sculpted near the elbow. There's individual differentiation between each finger. There's also in the torso, there's a nice sculpted sectioning between the hip and the stomach area. And there's also several defined muscles in the leg as well. I'm going to catch this recess in the eye socket, as well as underneath the jawbone and inside the mouth, all of these teeth. And then I also want to make sure that I get all of these bumps as well so that they stand out a little bit. So I'm going to apply a little bit of Knoll Oil onto one of the sections, and then I'm going to wipe up my brush and I'm going to blend all of that paint very smoothly into the rest of the mini using the clean brush. Here's the bloodletter after the Knoll Oil's been applied. It hasn't lost any of that ghostly look, but it's got a little bit more differentiation in the little details. We're going to add one more shade in some of the very most shadowed areas, and that's going to be Druchii Violet. And I'm just applying this to a couple areas that are going to be in the most shadow. So by the fin on the back, this gap under the rib cage, and under the shoulder, just anywhere I feel like needs a little bit more depth to the shadow. Here's the mini after the Druchii highlight shade. Now that we've got all of our shades blocked in, we're going to do one final highlight going all the way up to Ceramite White. I'm also going to be mixing this with a little bit of Lamian Medium on my palette to make the paint slightly more translucent and to help it blend better. Now I'm going to be using this white to add a final highlight to some of the areas that are going to be in the most light, so right under the cheekbones and on top of the face, also the very tops of many of these muscles. I'm also going to use it to help me contour some areas a little bit better so they seem more round. This area on the shoulders and the back, I'm going to highlight right underneath the bumps on the skin. I'm just putting down a little bit of paint, then I'm cleaning off my brush very quickly and blending the transition down into the rest of the skin. If at any point I feel like it's gotten too bright or the contrast is too stark, I can go back in with a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh and use that to help me blend the transition between the white highlight and the skin tone that was already there. I also want to highlight these little skin bumps on the back especially, and I'm just going to dab the very top of them. And here's the ghostly skin tone completed. It's very much not what you traditionally expect to see on a bloodletter. However, I feel like this skin tone will look great on Dark Eldar or some of the other Chaos Demons, maybe even some Tyranids. It's just another skin tone to have in your painting arsenal. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos, I have another one where I'm going to take this bloodletter and I'm going to add some of the traditional red glowy elements to the mini in the MiniWarGaming Vault in the link down below in the description. If you don't already have a Vault membership, go ahead and click the link. You can sign up for a 7-day free trial and get access to my video as well as hundreds of other videos in the MiniWarGaming Vault. So go ahead, click the link, start your free trial, and happy wargaming.